Okay, I think we got it. One more thing. That would make more sense. There we go. What we got to do tonight, quite a few different things to do actually. We're going to start out, I'm not going to start out with these walnut bowls though. Make a little less mess to start with. Got some stuff to actually do a little finish first. Do this little hollow form. And maybe we'll do the black locust bowl as well. This just needs finish on it. No sanding, no nothing. Just a nice, quick, easy coat of the 3408, which is already out somewhere. That's over here. Let me get some gloves though. So we'll get a little pad ready here first. We need to use the last little bit out of the big bottle. Now we'll go back into our little bottle. Not much left in here. This is a piece of Bradford pear. Soak it in. Nice good rub down. Make sure everything is saturated. I think we're pretty much there. And there's some end grain around that knot that was a little bit not saturated. It should be good. And we'll wipe off the excess. Trying to make sure I don't miss any. Especially around these areas that has this blue, and that blue is actually super glue. That's the 3460 with some mica powder in it. That's what I use to fill them. That should be good enough. Hit it with a little bit of activator. Probably could stop using the activator now for me. Humidity's up higher than what it was. We'll give it a little light spray above it and let the mist land on it. And that's it. Take it out. Sit off to the side. Give it a buff tomorrow or some other day this week, maybe. And the question is, let's just make a mess rather than. I got a bowl back here that I need to sand, but I've been crawling around half the day on my hands and knees doing molding around the flooring and put new flooring in the family room, and we're at the point of putting a little shoe molding down to cover up the edges. So that was our adventure today. So we're a little on the stiff side tonight. So eeny, meeny, miny, mo. One's bigger than the other. Actually, they're both actually the same diameter, but this one will be a little different. This actually must have had a branch coming out from this side as well. So this is all end grain right there. So I'm not quite sure what that one is going to do. But we'll find out. Drive the spur in. Going right over the corner of there's an outfeed table right behind me for my table saw, which has big heavy legs on it. So that's basically, this one will be an issue. There's less weight on one side than the other. So it'll make it a little different to do. Probably won't be able to turn it very fast. But we'll definitely manipulate it a little bit to try and get it in balance so that we can add a little bit of speed to it. We definitely have a high side and a low side. Definitely has a lot more weight on one side than the other right now. But we'll try and change that a little bit. You can see that's considerable. You can leave this opening, I don't usually do that. I'm going to manipulate it a little bit. I'm not going to get too carried away with this one. We'll see what it's going to do. So we'll get our typical 1/2 inch bowl gouge. We use a swept back bowl gouge. Actually, the swervy one. Like I say, I'm trying to use up an old Sorby one. I'll use that to start the roughing process. Be a little harder on the edge of it because of all the bark and all the other good stuff there. We'll start out nice and slow. Like I say, we're not gonna get no real speed out of it, especially right at the moment. This means we have to go a little bit slower. Object now is just we're just gonna make it round, and then we'll see what we're gonna do with it. And we still gotta take some off there yet. See how much further I can manipulate it. Yeah, no, be able to turn it a little bit more. It should have. Yeah, it's got everything cut. So now we can do a little manipulating. I'm going to turn it just a little bit more. Try and get those 2 points to be a little bit more even than what they are. This is going to be shallow to start with, which most of the time the natural edge stuff, it's a little better to do them shallower. And this is a crotch, so unless you get a really big fat crotch, they're always going to be shallow. Be a little careful when you get out there to the end, because there's a considerable difference from there to there, at least at this point. So there. Could make one more. One more slight little adjustment. And that little adjustment, I'm not going to even go back and re-true it up. I'm just going to go from the bottom up. Each time I true more up, it's taking more off the diameter. This probably won't go in there. Let's try and hit it. Oh, told you. So just back it up a little bit. Now we can true up the bottom, and then we'll go from there. I didn't set up the other camera yet, because we could do this in multiple view. Not that that necessarily will show you a lot at this point. It'll give you a little bit more of an idea what I'm doing. Can bring it in a little closer. Here we go. Now we'll make this even and flat across the bottom. Not quite. Very little. This, and once again, it's just like all the rest of this walnut that I have right now. Is there's very little actual dark stuff in it. But this is a crotch. It does have some flames through it. Might as well get rid of the corner around there. The rest of that'll go away. So now we have to think about the foot. I think we'll start big. You can always take more off, so. Does have a little bit of interesting grain to it. There's actually a. This the one? Oh yeah, this is one. So that's the branch, the dark spot. There's a ring in there. That's the branch coming up through there. Also a good place that it might crack on me a little bit. You can address that at a later date because it'll have to dry. We will take it to a final thickness out here. I won't try and twice turn things like this. Simple parting tool. This parting tool is grounded at the angle to match the dovetail jaws. And go a little bit deeper than what it is. That'll also become the foot eventually. Might as well clean up this last little bit in there. So now we can give it a shape. Get rid of these fuzzies. It's just an unbevel supported cut. It's not going to give you a clean cut. I'm just trying to get rid of material as quick as I can, basically. So we're going to have a low point there and sort of two high points. These sort of end up being, a lot of people call them like a heart shape. Pretty much purely a decorative kind of a bowl. They're not not a whole lot useful to them. So I switched to a sharper gouge. And tighten the tool rest up, it helps. We can't get on the bevel when that close. Now we pretty much have a clean cut except in there. So we'll clean that up. That one should actually be just about ready to turn it around. I don't need quite that big of a flat area in there as well for the jaws to sit on. And a little shear scraping, just really nice little fine shavings come off. And should pretty much, although this walnut here just doesn't, it sort of wants to tear some of the grain out for some reason. A little bit there. So we'll just be a little bit more gentle. It would take a fair amount of sanding in some of those places. I think on some of the other stuff that I did of this walnut it's like nothing I did to it. Yeah, we got some bumpies too. I think we'll go sharpen these two quick like. And that way we know that at least that is eliminating that problem, that part of the equation. So we're going to go to final thickness right off the bat. So the cleaner the cut, the better, less work we'll have down the road. It's well worth the minute or so to take the time out to do it. And then back to it. Still don't have it. It's still this and probably will not balance up. No way, shape, or form, probably. And you can see the nice little teeny tiny little shavings you get when you do that. It's still going to fuzz up this because of it's being wet a little bit, but that little fuzzy stuff comes right off when you go to sand. Then move my tool rest as far over as I can. I need to be able to drop the handle down. I can't have things in the road to do that. Actually up here at the top, I don't need to shear scrape. I can actually get back on the bevel up here and slice it. I need to take a little bit more off. Looked like there was still a tiny little flat spot up there at the top, right at the bark. Let's see if we get rid of that. Still tiny flat right there. Gotta take just a little bit more off. Try not to throw the shape totally out of whack. Now we'll just blend that little spot there. And it should be good. The outside. Get rid of the little flat. Nothing totally ripped up, which is always a plus. So we'll take our spindle gouge and go in here and clean up this where our jaws are going to sit. And make sure that it's flat, either flat or a little bit concave will be better. Nice crisp corner in the middle in there, because the jaws really sit right down into that corner. Make sure. That's what I thought. Still don't have it concave quite enough right there. And then that will become, eventually that will become the foot. This will run down in and we'll tuck that in and we'll give it like a little beaded foot. That's about the right size. It's probably a little less than 3 inches. Yeah. Overall, this started out at 8, I think. So that's one ready to go into the chuck. We might as well just do some more of the, I didn't do the other ones weren't crotches, they're just small little natural edge bowls. Had a little bit of time on Wednesday evening, come down here and was listening to the Wednesday group on Zoom, and I turned through the little natural edge bowls while I was watching that, listening to it. If there was something that struck my interest, then I'd stop what I was doing and look at what they were doing, talking about. So we're going to try and get the grain to run up and down with the jaws. Tenants. Could have been a little bigger, I believe. Should be alright. Yeah. A little less than the perfect circle, but that's fine. Oh yeah, you're gonna squeak already? This will be different on the part of digging the inside out. Move that just a little bit. It shouldn't be too bad. Gotta get this Sorby used up, so we'll use that more so. We'll save the good one for the. Still not going to be able to get any real big speed out of it. Now watch, because we're going to sort of go right into end grain here. So I won't go in as straight as what I normally would. Slicing across the end grain is okay. I just don't want to necessarily go directly into it. Straight into it. Right where you can see the tool wants to bounce in some of them places. That's right there's the branch coming through. Not very big. It was much bigger on the outside than what it is in there, but this kind of a shape is a little bit more challenging to do. For one, you can't get them to go. You can't get them very fast because you can almost never get these balanced very well. That little tree branch is kind of a pain. It's also probably, that's the Sorby one, so it's probably already it's starting to get dull already. There's a little bit of figure showing through. Certainly won't be the prettiest thing I ever had, I'm sure. Like I say, it's pretty much, the bark is hard on the cutting edge tools, and that being a sort of a lesser gouge to start with. So we'll go back to our Thompson tool. And we'll get the rest of this down to where we want. Make for a little bit slower process. We're down to about 1/2 inch, so we want to take probably at least another 1/8 of an inch out of that. Bark is really pretty thick on this stuff, so I think I'll leave it about 3/8 of an inch on these. See what they do. Take a little bit longer for it to dry, but though these things here will be dry in probably about 2 months, something like that. The final cut will go nice and slow. And let it cut really nice and efficiently out there on the outside edge. So we're down to 3/8. No, probably not. Not quite. Generally, I try and make these relatively thin. Some of the ones I did the other night were more like about 1/4 of an inch thick. They'll actually dry pretty quickly. So that should be where we need to be. Yeah, guess where we're going to leave it. Give me a better chance of the bark staying on. It's a little bit thicker, and the bark will distort as it dries. So then when I come back to sand them smooth, I'll have a little bit more material to be able to remove as well. Feels like it's pretty consistent. I probably should even measure them a little bit. Yeah, my fingers weren't lying, so that's always a plus. Now we can just sort of continue on down. Now we got some weight out of it. Still get a little bit more out of it. Definitely relieves some stress in the wood too. And I went back up there to pick up that cut up here. When I got up behind that cut, which is where I need to pick it up, I want to come up behind it, pick it up behind it, and go through it. It was bouncing up there. So that means it's a little bit, it has moved already, because you relieved the tension in the middle. So it moved a little bit. So we'll see where we're at. I figured just run that curve the rest of the way through the bottom. And that'll be it for that. Let's see if I got my sharpened. This is a bottom bowl gouge, sort of. It's still a 60-degree grind, but it is very efficient going across the center. Just doesn't, they don't clear the chips as well. That's it. Did we? So I thought we left a little. I don't mind leaving that little nub sticking up, but I don't really want to crown out around it. So we'll make one more little cut. You can see it as it's spinning. There's something there. I want to cut through the center. I don't want to tear that center out. It'll leave a hole. That's it. So we can check our dimensions somewhat. We are probably definitely in the very center. We're definitely down into the tenon part, which is okay because we left it plenty big enough, and we're going to use that as our foot eventually anyhow. So that'll work. And some of the other little ones I was doing, it does have some little bit of crotch figure there, tiny little bit going up there. Like I say, we'll let this dry for about 2 months probably, and it'll twist and warp and do all kind of interesting stuff. And then we'll come back and we'll, from there, I'll just grab it with the chuck from there. We'll sand the inside up, and we'll flip it around. We still have a point, an anchor point here. I'll just put it on a jam chuck, and we'll take this curve, and we'll make this curve go down into that corner, and just make a bead on there, and that would be the foot. That'll be the foot. Kind of a fun little project to do, some ways, a lot of ways. Not making such a giant size mess either. The next one will make a little bit more of a mess because it's bigger. Did the smaller one of the two. This is the same log. It's just the fact that the pith running down through it was offset from one to the other, from one side to the other. They ended up with a one that's a little smaller than the other one. This one I even managed to didn't find my mark the right time to where the center point was at. I ended up drilling a whole bunch of different holes. to give me a flat area in there. I wanted it to be pretty much as well centered as what I could get. This one actually looks like it has a little bit more, figure to it on this side. There's still a little bit of the pith left in there though, which we'll get rid of, but it's one of them things you sort of need to be a little bit aware of. Also has some little checks there that kind of missed out when I was cutting it round. I might have cut it, went down to like the next size smaller circle. So we'll see. This one's going to be the same way, where it's really sort of a high side and a low side. And I definitely want to try and manipulate them somewhat to make them a little bit more uniform. They can be off by a little bit. That's a good solid 1/2 inch there. A little bit more even there. So I think that's probably a good starting point. We'll true it up, and then we'll figure out from there where we go from. So we'll start off nice and slow. Everything's good and tight. Standing off to the side. This will be the same as the other one. You're looking at 650 RPMs. That's very, very slow. That means you have to be rather meticulous on your cut. Go slow and let it cut. That's why it's cutting in 2 little places really yet. Definitely going to have to take a fair amount off over there to get rid of those cracks. See where they're at. Cracks are still there. Them cracks, they don't look to be super deep. But we've cut pretty much the whole, we've cut the whole way around on the rim. So now we can sort of go back and eyeball things. We're way low there. Not so low there. So if we maneuver this like that, I should raise that one up closer to that one. Actually made that one worse. But we know we still got to get rid of some cracks. So let's just take another little cut off and then we'll see where we're at. One crack left, which will go away. Probably could take some more off. There's just a little slight remains of the crack right there. I'm more interested as to whether I did any good maneuvering these up around. That one's not too bad, but that one. So if we move it on that axis. This is why I do them between centers. I see other people do some of this stuff in different ways, that they would clean out some of this and put a faceplate or a ring or something in there to hold it, but it's like this gives me the most easiest way to manipulate where things are at so that I can get it more evenly balanced. And we got to slow way down on our feed rate out there. As you can see, it wants to start to bounce because it's probably, as you can see, the difference out here is probably 3/4 of an inch. So it's really only cutting a little bit along that edge. One little crack left there. The rest of it is pretty clean. So I think we're probably not going to get them any better than that. Don't think. Pretty even. How far off? Still 3/4 of an inch. So did we move it one more time? That should be the last. It's going to be the last move. At this point, I just sort of cheat because I'm pretty much sure that it's going to be the last move. I'm also going to make the cut get a little bit bigger as I go down, and I'm already starting to take some of the excess material away. May not even go the whole way down. There's a spin, and you can see the line where we're going to run out of solid wood, like right about there. And we're going to run into the part that's not so solid, as the tool slipped right through it, right there. So I don't need to mess with that anymore. I can just go down here, flip it around, and take it off from the bottom easier than I can keep farting around up there. That'll go away pretty quickly. It's quite close to the tool rest, but that's okay. So now we can get rid of this side. A little easier. So now we should have things pretty well balanced up. This one's going to have definitely some figure down the middle. May end up with, kind of doubtful that we'll end up with any of this black left in the final piece. Maybe a little bit there. This is probably definitely going to go, this will all go away. Probably so will that. But we have it flattened out, so now we can get rid of our corner. We should be able to, if we did a good job, and get a little bit, I actually got a couple hundred RPMs out of it. It'll just make the cutting a little bit more efficient. Now we can mark our tenant. I'm going to add a little bit more to it than what the other one was. And only the left leg touches on that scenario there. I'm being kind of lazy. The tool rest actually should be raised up a little bit for this. Kind of in some ways getting close to being cutting on below center. That's why it doesn't necessarily cut so efficient there. It wants to chatter a little bit. We'll deepen that up a little bit here. I just want to get rid of some more of this out here. A little easier to do it with the gouge than it is a parting tool. And we still have flat, so we know we got to take more out. And we have to get the whole way to the top. very good shape so far, but so let's finish up our tenon, and then we'll change things around. I'll take the time to raise the tool rest a little bit there. This probably could use sharpened as well. So I want to leave this fairly deep because this, like I say, it's like the last one. This will become the foot eventually, so I can leave myself enough room to make that into the foot. And don't move the tool rest while the thing's moving. It's really not a good idea on the natural edge stuff to move the tool rest at all, because right away your hand's going to be out here somewhere if this comes around and whacks you in the fingers. Unless you're really a very unintelligent person, you only ever do it one time, because it will smack you, and it will smack you hard. So we'll clean up our tenon. Nice sharp corner. And then we can work on shaping a little bit. Actually, it looks like it could be a little bit on the deep side. Because I don't want this to come down and want it to be a nice gentle curve. I think we can take, first off, I can take a little bit more of that out. I don't need that much in there for the foot to be at. Makes it more challenging to get the cut to go the whole way up through the bark as well there. So I think I like that better, because when we come back, once this dries, this part of this curve down here, this will go away. This will curve back down into there. This will shrink up a little bit. Could probably even shrink that up a little bit right now, because that's pretty deep. 3/8. Because I don't want it can't bottom out on the jaws. So them jaws are almost a 1/2 inch. I probably can leave it alone, or just take a little bit off to make sure. And we'll just knock that little razor blade edge off right there. Good place for a crack to start. So I think that'll work. I try not to leave too much because this is going to move considerably. Maybe. They usually do. I think I'm going to just straighten that out a little bit. Even though we're doing a shear scraping cut, I still want to go from the bottom to the top. Now we're going to look for humps, which is one right there. Always a tendency to try and reach up there and touch it while it's spinning, but once again, another one of the things you're only going to do that once. Still have a little bit of a hump right there. Probably chase that hump all day long, so we'll just cut it. Still didn't get that hump. Doesn't help that the gouge is getting a little bit dull. See if I can get in. Yeah. This is actually the 40-degree gouge. It's not going to let me speed it up though. Pretty much got it. Still a little bit fuzzy grain because of it being wet right down in there. But walnut is actually very soft too. Most people consider it a pretty hard wood, but it doesn't. It's soft enough that 120, once it's dry, 120 grit paper will breeze right through that and take that little fuzzy part away. Happy Mother's Day, Mommy. Now we're looking for where our high points are at. It's also where the tool rest could hit it. This is going to be a little bit more challenging because of all these holes that I drilled, but did you enjoy it? Did Mom enjoy the play or whatever it is you went to, or she went to? Us poor people. We stayed at home and got all the molding down in the family room today. And I got nail holes to fill and paint. It was a pretty productive day for me. It's cutting pretty efficient. This gouge is also sharp. So now that we got some of the junk out of the road, now this is actually balancing up. More like it. Now we can be very efficient on the cut. And we still have this set. Yeah, just try and make these both pretty much the same. It's pretty even for right there. Half-inch tools don't necessarily like the 3 or 3.5 inches worth of overhang that I have right at the moment, but I just need to slow down and let it do its thing. Try and match the outside to the inside. Right, there's also where the 40-degree gouge does not like. You start to turn that corner, I'm starting to turn the corner, you can see how it chews up the end grain. It doesn't, it's not as versatile, in my opinion, as the swept back bowl gouge. It does certain things really, really well. One of which is not going around that corner. But we're almost at the right thickness down there. So we'll just take and switch back to our bottom gouge and work some more with that. This is also a 5/8 inch bar, so it can hang over the tool rest considerably further than the 1/2 inch gouges. It's a little bit different of a gouge to use. It's taken me quite a bit of practice with it. It can be rather aggressive for one. And they're a little bit harder to pick up a cut up in here. But it will swing a very tight radius in there as well, which is kind of good. I did all right. I think I measured earlier. Yeah, we're definitely down into the bottom, into that tenon, so it's something to keep in mind. We have plenty of material with that piece plus the tenon. That piece plus the tenon will make the foot. So it won't make a funnel. I didn't do a very kind job right there, though. Have to take another little cut. Don't really have a very good radius on that either. We'll come back up in here and we'll make another little cut. Slow down. That's part of the reason it wants to tear up. It's moving a little too fast for it. So let's see whether it did it. Still doing it. That's going to be one of those places. It's right where the crotch, right over here. The crotch figure's coming down and across there. It's figures there. The crotch, let's go down here. So what's happening? It's these 2 points are merging right here. So it does not want to cut cleanly. And I have my doubts. We're going to try though. And try and see whether it'll allow me to scrape it. Probably not, but probably made it worse. It did. It made it worse because there's more of it out there yet. So the scraping part, which I kind of figured that'd be the case. So switch to the smaller little sort of bowl, bottom bowl gouge, as it is sharp. That one there should be fairly sharp, but this one is definitely, the door's open and I got a fly in here. Because that part that's that part that's all stood up there, I got some of it. Got out there too far with that scraper and got some of that. So we'll just make a little cut. We'll come up a little higher. Hopefully that did it. That's some of it. There's still a little bit right in the middle. I don't think I could be here all night trying to get that to cut cleanly, because there's probably a lot of moisture right there to go with it. So I think we're just going to call it good enough at that. And both them bottom bowl gouges are pretty much the same, just different size bar. I actually have a bigger one yet of that too. That's it. About 3/8 of an inch wall thickness. Get my bowl gouges out of the chips before I lose them. Throw things on the ground. That's 2 down. I got a little rambunctious. I guess it was last weekend when I started cutting. Well, I cut this log that had the crotch on it, and I literally cut the whole log. So I have like 4 more pieces over on the workbench. I'll just go grab one of them. We're gonna have to sharpen them tools before we do anything else. This will get marked. Take a marker, Sharpie, and write on there the date, what it is. It'll go in its paper bag. Like I say, these will take 2 or 3 months, maybe 6 months at the most. This time of year, the dehumidifier is running like crazy down here in my basement, so it'll dry them out fairly quickly. This one, the curve will go the whole way, finish the curve, get rid of that ledge, and then we'll make a beaded foot or some sort of a foot out of the rest of that there. It doesn't have a whole lot of, it really doesn't have a whole lot of character to it. One tiny little bit there. There's probably more on the outside, more going across the bottom than anywhere. So it'll be one of the things that somebody picks up and looks at, and right away they're going to say, that's walnut, it's white. Like, well, yes, that's walnut. So we'll go back to our other half a log. These actually have some character to them, but they're, like I say, I really wanted to get to them earlier this week, since we've changed our hours of work. Except Thursday night, they made me do more work. This thing has started to crack because these ends have not been sealed on this. So the question's going to be whether we can actually get 2 of them out of it. Now, they're only about 6 inches, so we need about 12. So yeah, we should be able to get 2 small ones out of it. So just put a little notch here in the bark so I know where it's at, because I can't cut this log. I'm going to cut this on the bandsaw. I can't cut a half a log on the round part because it'll just rock. If you ever get the bright idea, try it. You'll find out as soon as this made contact over here with the bandsaw, it'll automatically slam it down to the table. And chances are not in your favor that you will not have a bandsaw blade very good anymore, because it usually bends them and does all kind of good stuff. I don't have the now I'll have my back to you. One of these days, I thought of that earlier today. I really need to get a camera over here so you could actually see what we're doing. It's not very exciting because we're just going to cut these square. These should actually have a little bit of character to them, maybe. These have this actually has more dark wood in it. So we cut them about 6 inches long. And they're about 6 inches wide, a little over 6 inches maybe. So if we said really seriously unscientific. So we're about 6 inches. So there's our point there. Our point there. Close enough. Cambium layer doesn't like a spade bit either. We're going to get down to where we're in the solid material. That we do need. In some ways, these are really a fun kind of size to do. They're pretty quick to do, as you'll see, once we sharpen some tools up. Put my ruler away. if I had a 6-inch circle, or even if I really wanted to, I could cut them corners off on the bandsaw. But it's it's one of them issues of, do you take that time to get that out? And for some reason, I don't have I think I destroyed the 6-inch disc that I had. Just as easy to turn them off. Not to mention I'd have tiny little pieces of wood to contend with versus chips. And as you very well know, I don't have any issues getting rid of the chips. My guy at work takes them. I just took him some last week. So we're there. We're there. It probably looks close enough to get started. So let's go sharpen our couple bowl gouges, and then we'll get back at it. This one is back beyond the flutes, so it becomes a little bit more of an issue to get it back to where it was at. But it doesn't take much, really doesn't take a whole lot to bring it back to its former glory, I guess you'd say. Just looking for the nice even shine the whole way around. Shows that you've gotten all the edges. And the 40 degree we're going to do on the same, actually really being sort of lazy, cheater way. I switched grinding jigs for one. It is very repeatable, but I still have the one way set up for that. And I already have this set for to do the 40 degree gouge. So I've been kind of cheating, I guess you'd say. And I can do that just without changing anything on the wood cut one. That's just kind of a, I don't know, lazy man's way of doing it, I guess you'd say. I call it more having the tools of the trade to do what I wanted it to do. So everything's tight. We really don't know whether we have the high points and the low points set yet, but all we're going to do is get rid of the corners. This one's actually going to cooperate and let me get a little bit of speed out of it right off the bat. We know the corners down here. It'll go there first. Here's also where you can get whacked by some bark. But I'm out of the line of fire. but I will cut from the top down. As you can see, what it's trying to do right there. It's trying to pull that off. So if I was to cut in the direction from the bottom to the top from the very start, it's trying to pull that bark off the whole time. You have to stop and move things a little bit more. So there again, if I would have cut those corners off, then that would be less. I can see right off the bat though. On that one, we've cut into the bark there, but we haven't cut into the bark there. So I might as well, or even go any further on that one. Just back it up a little bit, and we're going to move it 1/8 of an inch or so that way, and then we'll see what it does. So now we already have it in balance. I'm able to turn at whatever speed I want to turn at right now. Still taking a little bit. We've taken more off of that one, so I probably moved it. Did I move it in the wrong direction? No. Now let's take some more off of it and we'll see. Because we're still not round at the top. There we got some white, a lot more on that side. What are we doing on these top ones? Top ones are actually good. So we want to take less there, more there. We'll move it over. It's also why there's no point in that live center. Because if I want to move it just a little bit, because I'm really not, even though I'm saying I'm moving, and I'm not moving a lot. But if it had a point, then I wouldn't be able to move it very easily. So hopefully I moved it in the right direction. Got about that much there. You can use my thumb as a gauge. Pretty good. Pretty good. Like I say, this size of these is just be a great place to start if you've never done any of the natural edge stuff. 6, 7-inch balls, 8-inch maybe. Just a good place to get your feet wet on it, so to speak. Now we can clean up our bottom. Corner goes away, which we know. And we can start to shape it a little bit while we're at it. So now we have to think about tenon size, and that's probably way too big for that size of bowl. So we'll have to drop drop back a little bit. Can leave it a little bit oversized as well. Can always take more wood off later. Go switch to the smaller tool rest too. More time I can stay directly over the center of the tool rest, the better off I am. Get rid of the majority of it with a bowl gouge. Come back with our parting tool. Make our dovetail. And now we can get a shape to it. Just like the last one, it looks a little deep. So we'll just bring that tenon. I could bring the whole tenon up, or I can just leave actually just another step here. Probably easier just to leave another step. Make it more the shape that I want. See whether this one's cutting cleanly. Wonderful, it is. Just have a little bit of a lump up there. Like I say, these are quite quick to do. Matter of fact, we'll do the bottom on both of them before we even spin around with the chuck. That's what I did the other night with them. Still have a little hump. Look up there at the horizon. Not looking down at the tool. I'm looking up here at the top of the bowl to get rid of the little lumps and bumps. That's good. Last but not least, we'll clean up our tenon down here and make sure it's good and clean. Knock that sharp edge off of it for starters. Into the corner. Come back into that corner. Looks like it's a dovetail. And that edge should be a little concave. It's really hard to tell when it's actually that small. But we're just going to say that it is. If there's a doubt, then just make it a little bit more of a concave than what you think. that's one ready. Like I say, this part right here will become its foot eventually. This will go away once it dries. This one is going to have some, it'll have some black in it. If we can get this in here the way it, in the hole. Some people like to do it this way. I would almost prefer not to do it this way in some ways. Just kind of being lazy and not taking the drive center out. But if we push that in there and bring the tailstock up, bring the pressure up on the tailstock, can spin it around and lock it and wiggle it back and forth a little bit. Give it a couple more cranks on the handle and do that like 3 times or so. Now them prongs are well into the meat of the wood. Good secure grip. The short tool rest, yeah, it'll work. You can sort of maybe half-assed eyeball that a little bit. And then we'll take these corners off. When you move the tool rest, it's being lazy. Also, the really lazy one would be to actually grab the 5/8 inch gouge. And then you can make these even go quicker yet. Because the 5/8 gouge will allow me to hang over the tool rest by a good solid 3 inches, 4 inches, without any vibration issues. This one actually balanced up quite quickly too. For being able to turn pretty much right at speed. Wow. That don't happen very often. Looks like the 2 low points are already right where they need to be. Or close enough. Damn. I better quit. That don't happen very often to where you get it on there and are dumb luck enough to actually get it where you need it at to start with. And just like before, we're going to clean up our bottom. We're interested in the middle, because that's where our tenant's going to be. Scribe with the left leg, match up the right leg. Do not allow the right leg to touch. Once again, one of them little details that they'll pretty much only do that once too. Scare the crap out of you because it will grab it, it will throw it. and start making our shape. Our tenants down here. I'm gonna leave these a little bit, make a longer tenon on these than what I need, but my intent is to leave that as our foot. Looking for torn grain. Not worried about the lines from the tool. That's what sandpaper is made for. Just making sure I don't have anything torn. And we don't. This will go away, so that doesn't really make any difference. Does need to be undercut though a little bit. And make sure our tenon is cut cleanly. I pretty much always do that with the spindle gouge. The parting tool gets you a nice, sort of a nice tenon, but it's not necessarily the cleanest cut that you could get. So I just clean it up with the spindle gouge. I've been watching a bunch of stuff that Richard Raffin is putting out nowadays. He loves his spindle gouge. I really should get the spindle gouge out, the bigger spindle gouge, and then I'll do it the little one, and try turning the outside of one of these little bowls with the spindle gouge. Ouch. My hand wrapped around there a little too far. Kinda has a tendency to smack you. 3 times around on a tightening up. And I'm doing it left-handed, so I'm not sitting there with 2 hands. Doesn't give you any better grip strength. Just tries to crush the tenon. And now we can get in here too close. Gotta be close, but I don't want to be too close because I don't want the bevel of the gouge to be able to drop down over. So here's sort of where I like the 40-degree gouge for this part. We changed something, so we slowed down. Bring it back up to speed. Whatever speed you're comfortable with. Good evening to you too. Happy Mother's Day. Even though I didn't do anything with my mother, but not unusual for me. There you go. Well, I now work Saturday, so I was making a living yesterday. And now I work Tuesday through Saturday, so. Daughter was up. Daughter come up to go look at cars. Her and her mother went and looked at cars, so then we went out for dinner with her. I put them away. Yeah, that's a full-time job. Yeah. Yeah. I hope you have better luck than that, too. Although she's usually pretty happy, but. Oh, yeah. I understand that all too well. Yep. I got a few more years than that on you, but yeah. Yep. I gotcha. Just like all the rest, we're managing to do something right tonight. So we're down. These are about 3/8 of an inch thick, which is what I determined I was gonna inner walnut, so that's why we're joking. So we're just gonna. I'm not gonna go straight across. We're gonna continue to dish that down a little bit, not by a lot. The bottom will actually end up down inside that the foot. No, these are wet. These are rough cut. Although they won't. These here, all these ones that I've done tonight, like this, they will not get cut anymore. Well, I shouldn't say that. The only thing that will get cut, I'll show you once I pull it out. The only thing that will get cut more on these will be the foot. No more cutting on the sides. They'll only be cut. They'll only be shape the foot and finish up the foot. That's why you sort of I have to be rather vigilant on the quality of the cut, the quality of the shape, because I am not going to go back and recut them. Looks like I'm leaving a line in there. I did. That's one of the places that I don't. Still working with that bottom bowl gouge, and I just don't. I don't seem to be able to pick up the cut back here where I want to. I can get across the middle okay, but I just don't get my satisfaction out of it right there. So I just go back to the swept back bowl gouge. Because I can do this, I can basically do the same thing with this. Wet wood likes to stick to the tip. In most places, this doesn't matter except down here at this very bottom. It looks like we need to make one more little lightweight cut across there. Left a little, probably really doesn't show on the camera, but there's a ring right here in the center. Also feeling to make sure that I don't have any giant sized lumps or ridges or anything in there. Feels like we could actually make a little light pass across there. Be nice if they wouldn't stick on there. Lose track of where I'm at. I really don't need necessarily see what the tool's cutting. When you get in here in the middle, it's kind of a little bit advantageous to have the visualization of what you're doing. The rest of it, I'm looking on the right side. I'm not looking on the left side. So that should be good enough. So I get set off to this, go for a nap in its paper bag. It's like all the rest of them. And then a couple months from now, I can go back. When I come back to these, I have the mark from the center. So we'll use maybe this one, different one maybe. This one's probably actually a little bit too big, but that goes in the chuck. And these would basically, yeah, that one's too big. I have some smaller ones. They'll basically get jammed back between centers. I'll true up. The only thing I will recut this part down here because this will become my foot. So we'll retrue this up. We'll take this curve and it'll run right down into that corner of that foot and look something like this guy. This is what we'll do to it once it dries. This one here on my right hand is actually dry. I think that's, we're going to finish up the inside of that one, and then we're going to sand this one, because that's all it needs is sanded and finished. So that's what I'll do once they dry. Like I say, I'll recut. I basically, for the most part, I'll use a spindle gouge and come back in here, remove that flat area, taper that back up into there, and make the bead. And sand them. They're a little bit, I don't know, it's kind of a toss-up as to whether they're harder to sand that way. I mean, I can't spin them and sand them, I'll put it that way. But it's not, you'll see once I go back and do that other little one, or that other one that I need to sand. Give you some ideas on how I do it. So we'll go back to this other little one, and this will be the last one. So that's 4 of them tonight, these little guys. The other 2 were crotch pieces. They took a lot longer to do because I couldn't get them in balance. They were semi-balanced, I put it that way. I couldn't get them into a perfect balance to where I could spin them at the RPMs that I wanted to spin them. So we change things, we slow down, come back up to speed. We'll make our cone. And we'll stop and take a look at whether we're probably pretty close to where I want to be, I think. At least by the way it looked. We're doing good. Done enough of these the last couple of weeks. It's like I almost don't need to measure them, but I want it to be as close, as accurate as what it can be. So we can go back the other way, get rid of some of this. That way we're using both sides of the gouge. Let's stop and make sure we didn't leave a line. I feel like we did. Nothing, one more little tiny cut. The only problem with working with wet wood though, it sort of wants to gum up the tools a little bit. So here's where we need a light touch. We pick up our cut up in here. We'll make a nice light cut, top to bottom. Stop short of the other cut. And that should leave us a nice, pretty smooth surface. Definitely a sandable surface. When you're working with wet wood, it doesn't. Some wet woods actually do all right. Some with this walnut, some of it's not. It's leaving some. You run your fingers across it, it's sort of fuzzy that it's picking some of the grain up. But you can see how wet it is. The part here that really looks yellow, that's water. That's moisture. Comes around to here, there's less of it because this is all end grain. That's where it's trying to escape from. Where this is white, this is sort of a, I don't know, a little bit of a brownish color. Ones of this size, probably if I looked around in the shed long enough, there's probably some of that this kind of material down in my shed that would actually be dry. But I would much rather do it when it's wet. No dust, for one. Cuts easier. And the price is right. Yes. You're right, especially with walnut, because me and walnut don't really get along as far as to do any like woodworking type stuff with it. I mean, I've done some walnut in the wood turning world. Right now I have too much of it. But a lot of it, the majority of what I have is like this. It's more sapwood than heartwood. So now we're just feeling our way around our curve. It feels like it could, but I do got to look. It seems like I got a little on the deep side down there too. We're down into that. That's okay. Just doesn't quite feel as though I have the world's greatest curve to it.
I'll make one little cut, try and straighten that out. I'm going to come up fairly high on it. And go just a little bit deeper. And there's no harm in leaving that little nub at the bottom, which I did. That will come off real. You won't even, sandpaper hardly even touches it and it's gone. But if you make a divot in there or break that off to where it pulls the grain out, you'll be sanding there forever. That's it. Another one bites the dust. Oh no, I need that one. Do I need that one? The bigger one. The bigger one. So like I said, they're in a paper bag, and I did 4 of them tonight. I'll probably put all 4 of them in the same bag. Right on the bottom when they were turned, what they are. Put them in the bag and let them sit for a couple months. At 3/8 of an inch thick, they should be ready to go in about 6 months. Something like that. To be able to finish them up. Maybe sooner. Getting pretty well finished up sort of with my family room. So the intent is to have like a kitchen stand that's over in the closet, plus an old microwave. It was a good microwave in its day, I guess. Once upon a time we had a camper, pop-up camper, and we used that microwave in there. And my wife said some time ago about it, she said, well, because I'd like to try the microwaving some of these, because I've had different people tell me different things on that, to where, especially on something like that size, that I could use the microwave and dry it in a matter of a couple hours. It's still not super quick. It probably would take me almost a full day to dry one, but you can microwave them. That one first, and then they would be dry and ready to finish. So I will try that one of these days when I can get the microwave out of that room. Because our closet is where everything that was in the family room is in a closet that's not really very big. So it's a little hard to even move in that room, let alone pick a microwave up and bring it over here. So that'll be another day's adventure. And we'll do it with some of this walnut that I just got. Like I say, I have too much of it. So now the real key is to get the right one. This doesn't have to spin perfectly true. True enough to sand. So some of the natural edge pieces that I would do, like the ones I just did, once they're dry, if they would spin that true enough, or even if we go down super slow as it'll go, even though that's out of round, I could still sand that without too much trouble. You could sand it either with hand sandpaper, a lot of times you can even power sand at that point. I'd rather power sand, it's quicker, it's easier. This is a piece of black locust. It was filled with super glue and mica powder, colored super glue basically. Mica powder in it. Had a couple little places here that didn't had to go back after a second time. I will spin it in reverse. Not very fast. It's only like about 400 RPMs. Bring a dust hose up in the air where it'll catch it. Come on. Aye. I don't remember where I started and stopped at as far as grit on this one goes, so I just basically start over. There's 120 grit paper. Get up to the top, we slow down. Can even do the top up here by hand along the bark. Which is this right here, this part where I'm showing you right here, that's what I will do on them the little natural edge bowls that we just did. That's right there is exactly how I sand them. I put them on the same way, and I just take and spin them by hand. You do the whole thing this way. You just keep moving it around. You go right through all the grits. Inside and out. Of course, the size of what they are with those, they would get done with a 2-inch sanding pad rather than 3. We start with 120, you go to go 150, 180. You can always stop and do the edge first. These edges is inevitably where you're going to miss something. And we wipe off our dirt. That was 220. At this point, I really need to get in here and sand this little bead. For that, I started with 180. These are a little bit challenging in some ways to sand. It's always good to actually cut them a little bit better than maybe what this one is. They still don't sand very hard as far as that goes. But I want it to be sanded well. So 180, 220. Could actually spin it in forward rather than reverse. It would make it a little easier. Let's see more of what I'm doing. Hardest part is to get right down in that little groove where I'm using the folded over part of the sandpaper to get down in there. Other thing we could do there, we could just cheat and actually give it a good spin and burn a line in there as well. And then I wouldn't have to try and sand down in that groove so much. Really haven't tried that on one, but it sounds like a good idea. Also would give it a little bit of visual interest to the average person that really doesn't know what they're looking at when they look at something like this. Because they're able to look at it and say, well, that's two pieces. Which of course we know that it's not, but this gets sanded the whole way up through just like everything else. You just do it all one time. Makes it easier. And since we're sanding in this fashion, I will go the whole way to 800. The rest of it only goes to 400. And then we'll do a little bit of random orbit sanding by hand with the 800. But down in here, I want the scratches to be as small as they possibly can. So 2 grits left on the power. And last but not least is 400. Clean it off good with the brush. Looking for, should have looked a little harder earlier. No, that really doesn't. Well, you can see it. You see the white lines right there, there. It's a little bit of grain that stood up. That's not a good thing. So, and that will really show up whenever you put a finish on it. I just went back to 220. I'll sand these little areas by hand without it spinning. And we'll get rid of that. I should have been paying attention more so earlier. I normally inspect pretty good once I do like 150 or 120, 150. Usually go and look for those places if there is any, rather than get the whole way through at this point and then discover that there was something that you should have taken care of. Some of these are kind of hard to tell in some ways too, because this is the black locust is sort of like the ash, and some of them other ones. It's pretty open grain, so what sort of appears to be some that's more open than it should be may not necessarily be the case. So we'll just do the 220 by hand. We'll just go back to 320 and 400 again. Last but not least, we use a little bit of 800. We'll do it by hand, little random random orbit type thing, little circles basically, overlapping circles. It'll remove any of the, or at least break up any of the 400 grit scratches that might be showing up as circles. And your eye, the human eye, can't pick up the 800 grit circles. As well as we're inspecting as we go as to whether there's anything that maybe didn't look as good as what it should have. Lastly, we'll just take a paper towel. Paper towel will wipe off more of the dust than what you'd ever give it credit for. It's very much a dust magnet. I'll just keep that handy because we're gonna need that again. And I think this had the bigger jaws on this as well. I think so. Yep. Now we'll do the same, same thing on the inside. I got some places that I went back after with the colored super glue to make sure they were totally filled. So we'll just hit those couple little areas before you even spin it. Get them evened out. And if you don't even them out, and you would just start to sand it and spin it and sand it, the sandpaper will just, your sander will just bounce up over top of those. They would become like a little bump in there. I think that was the only place I filled. The other thing, when I do the inside, I'm going to look at, we have end grain there, end grain there. Like I say, I think I sanded some of this, but I'm not really for sure. This will stand in forward. Pretty low speed, about 400 RPM. Top to bottom. Watch where your fingers are, though. Come on. This one's almost a little bit deep in some ways. Makes it more challenging. You heard the little thump. That was actually the drill. I hit some of the bark. Not really what I wanted it to do. At least my fingers were back far enough that I didn't hit my fingers. So. The other thing we can do to be extra safe about it, we could just take and, for one, I probably could actually go and use the 2-inch sander instead. And think about that. And we'll do what we can with the 3, and then we'll go back after the center part with just the 2-inch. When I change directions, I start out over here on the right side, and as you see, I went down into here. What it's doing is, when I'm over here on the right side, the drill is spinning in that direction, so it's sanding in that direction. But when I come down here, now it's actually sanding in the opposite direction. Makes it a little bit more efficient, and you're also breaking up the scratches. And use the brush to clean out any dirt, debris, more importantly, sanding grit from the previous grit. So switch over to 2" for the inside, for the bottom. I think that's going to let me, yeah. You definitely don't need 120. You go right to 150. I'm pretty sure I've already sanded this. I'm going to slow it down just a little bit more. Hopefully we keep our fingers from getting whacked. And we'll just sand the very center part, because the rest of it's already been done. So we'll just run through the grits like we have with everything else. I feel there was something. Oh, there's like a little knot right there in the middle. Hope we don't end up with a hole through the other side. I was wondering what my sandpaper was catching on. That's what it is. The little knot's trying to fall out. Could end up being very irritating. I may end up filling that with super glue or something. Not what I had in mind, but Velcro's new on the sandpaper. Kind of challenging to get off. It's like the outside. Inside we'll do the same thing. We'll do a little bit of 800 grit, random orbit. And clean off as much of that dust sticks into the bark a little bit there. That's just on a soft pad. Makes it a little easier to hold. I don't know about that. I think we're going to go ahead and finish it and see what it looks like. Because I can always come back and grab this. Even once I take the tenon off the bottom, I can still come back and grab that by that ring or by the bead there. As long as I don't try and be a Superman and squeeze it super, super hard. Because it's probably the right size now. I won't be able to put it the whole way in anyhow. Maybe it's not. I'd have to go to the bigger. I have another chuck with bigger jaws yet. that would probably grab a hold of that bead and not really put any marks on it. And if I needed to hold it if that little knot goes the whole way through and would happen to really be obnoxious and fall out. There's no real, I don't see any knots over there, but there's definitely, that's a little branch or something right there. I don't know. So we're back onto our jam chuck. Let's turn my dust collector off. And we still have 4 more half logs over here on the workbench. Hopefully we get some time in the next couple days to take care of them, because I'm sure they're already starting to crack. Right now we're going to finish this one. My finish of choice is the Parfix 3408. Which is just it's a slow setting CA glue. We'll get this done in one coat. Is there any left in that body? Comes in either 2 ounce size or 8 ounce size. I don't normally use it out of the 8 ounce size, but I was filling up the 2 ounce bottle because I knew I had some stuff tonight that I wanted to finish. And this is what's didn't quite fit in a 2 ounce bottle. It should have been along for that adventure. You could have seen what it really means to make a mess. Because I did not have gloves on. I was filling a 2 ounce bottle. I don't know where my brain went to, but I didn't see that the bottle was just about full, and it actually got full and ran out all over the bottle, all over my hand. Had a bit of a mess going on. So what we're looking to do is saturate it, rub it in good, let it soak in. I do need the little bottle though, because I need to do that little bead. Yeah, let's try it with the big one. So just cheat and make that run right down into that groove. One last quick rub down. It has a 40-second time delay, so we're not in a super big hurry, but it'll also, once it starts to set up, it sets up just like any other super glue. It sets up pretty quick. Now we're just going to go back and wipe off the excess. Because I only want what's soaked into the wood. I don't want any of it laying on the surface. And we're going to literally wipe it dry for the most part. So just keep getting a dry part of the paper towel. Maybe some places up here where it's setting up quicker because that was filled with super glue. So super glue on top of super glue sets up quicker.
Don't want to leave them bits of paper towel in there because they'll be stuck fast. Yeah, it does. I like it. Stuff has a really sort of a big gnarly bark on it. Of course, so does a walnut. This piece here had been laying down in my shed for at least, I think I looked at some of the other stuff. I think it was 2017 when I was up and visited one of the guys from our turning club, and he gave it to me. And he said, he told me, I think he told me at that time it was already dry. It sat down in my shed for the last 5 years or so. I pulled it out, I don't know, a couple weeks ago. I'm going to give it just a little slow spin. Going to use a little activator on it at a distance. Nothing up close and personal. I was really surprised at it because it was a fairly good size. I mean, it was this wide. Well, it was that wide, and another couple inches longer on each end of it, and there was no evidence of cracking at all on it, which was kind of surprising. But lo and behold, when I cut the little pieces off the end to get it ready to turn, there was giant sized cracks in it. Nothing showed up on the very end of this log, but evidently what was on the end had already closed back up. But they were all on the inside of the log. So I was really kind of hesitant to even mess with it from there. I usually don't. If things have big cracks in them, I have a tendency just to leave them as firewood. That's just me. I'm not interested in being the Superman superhero guy that does all this stuff with the giant size stuff that looks like it's falling apart and all that stuff. To me, it's dangerous. So we'll grab that and we'll do the inside. I know that I wiped the inside, so we'll wipe it a little bit with a paper towel. And I didn't. That little dust generally, except on walnut. Walnut would be the one that dust in there would cause a problem. But oh yeah, I mean, my grandmother, whenever she was alive and I was a young man, and she burnt 10, 12 cords of wood a year. And that was one of the woods that we went in, the two woods that we would go after, because she lived on a farm, were the locust and oak. And yeah, you're right. I mean, the black locust, and I said to the guy that gets me some of the wood, and because I have a plank upstairs of it out in the garage that this guy gave me, because he was adamant that I needed to try it, and I'm like, he liked it, and I'm like, dude, I remember cutting this stuff as a young man as firewood, and if you were cutting it like at dusk or something like that, you could see the sparks coming off of it, that there's that much whatever in it. And I'm like, I don't know that I want to sharpen my tools every 2 minutes, but this would be I think the third piece that I've done now with it. I did 2 of the pieces that he gave me, and they both come out nice. I mean, they're heavier in weight than, if this was a piece of cherry or walnut or something like that, of that size, I think it's fairly, to me, it feels heavier in weight, but it does have it's kind of has a rather attractive look to it. I'm kind of curious as to whether over time in the next 6 months or a year as to whether it will turn brown, just like the outside. Inside is easier. Whichever side I do second is easier. Yeah. Oh, I don't know. Every bit of it that we ever sold over there at my grandmother's, and I've sold some of it here at home too. It does a pretty good job on dulling a chainsaw pretty quickly. So I don't know whether I don't know. Maybe it picks up something out of the ground, minerals or whatever. Oh yeah, you bet. It burns really hot. That's pretty much it. That's the only other thing. Sometimes I will take and I have to think about that one a little bit. Sometimes I'll take like a paper towel or whatever and just sort of wad it up, and usually I'll do that sitting upright, and I'll just go back and sort of dab some of it back on the top part of the bark. But yeah, it's kind of a toss up whether I don't know that that's totally necessary to do, but something I certainly could do. But that's it as far as finishing goes. Come back tomorrow or another day. Probably not tomorrow, but another day, and I'll buff it on the buffing wheels using a product called Vonex, and then carnauba wax over top of that. And this stuff, the one that I did for the other guy, the guy that gave me the wood, I gave it back to him already, or I'd show you. It buffed up to a really, really, really nice shine. Super smooth. And I think this one should too. There's a little bit of contrast there with the sapwood. So it should look pretty good as things go. It does have a 24-hour cure time to it, so you really don't want to go after it till tomorrow. Give it to 24 hours. There'll be some places I know up in here I can already feel it running my fingers across it that it's not smooth. Can either sand it a little bit with 800 grit sandpaper or a straight razor blade. It'll be for sale in another week or so. Yeah, it did come out pretty good. I'm still concerned about the little, we might have to think about that one. It's like a little tree branch or a little knot. I'm not sure which. And it's actually, since when I started sanding it, it must have come loose because it sunk down in. So gives it a little bit of character, but I don't
I also don't want it to fall out. So that may wait till tomorrow, or I'll just up and fill it. I do have, I think, yeah. I don't know how much of this is left. It's really getting thick. So let's add a little bit of fresh to it. Because you can mix mica powder with super glue, which is what all this stuff is actually a super glue. A no odor super glue. And slow setting. All those blue lines in there are super glue. And it's a 3460 rather than 3408. So let's see if we can make a mess out of this. Oh, you're going to tell me it's clogged up? No? Maybe? I got the bright idea that maybe I could save that because I had an empty bottle laying here. It didn't necessarily cooperate so well. So that we'll just let that set up on its own. See where it goes till tomorrow. So really don't want to, you know what, it's sinking. Whatever it is, it's also sinking it down. It's absorbing it down into that crack. Yeah, that's pretty neat. I don't know if you can, let's go back to strictly over the head. You gotta move it over. There you go. Now we can come in. There's definitely a void down in there. Although that time now it didn't go anywhere. So now we'll let it sit. When I first did that, whatever that little void is in there, it literally sucked it down in. So now this piece, I'll remount it back onto the chuck, and I'll probably power sand that little bit in there. There's even a little air bubble come up. But like I say, I'll just let that cure on its own. There's more than enough moisture around here with all the wet chips that are laying here behind it. So it'll set up on its own overnight. And a little bit of power sanding in there. And that'll be that. Then chips back away from the lathe. There's a cabinet underneath my lathe. There's a cabinet, so all the chips lay back here.
And you can see the little messy dots that I made. They'll have to go away because they'll dry just like they are. That little sucker is just, I think we're going to be playing with this a couple minutes. Gotta make sure. Okay, yep. That's what I thought. It's running out. That little branch goes down there and there must be some sort of crack underneath. There, we'll spray it up close and personal. And then we'll put some more in. And we'll see what it does. Now that I got the little pick out. But I also got the bottom, I sprayed the crap out of the bottom with the accelerator. So that should no longer be running. Nope. It was literally running out the other side is what it was doing. But like in this situation here, this is the difference between this and the sort of the normal kind of CA glues that most people would use or whatever. This will stay liquid for quite some time. This particular one here has about a 45 to 50 second time delay before it starts to set up. And I will not spray activator on top of that. I probably could have or even maybe should have sprayed activator on it first down in there. And then, because normally when I do these cracks and stuff like that, I'll spray the activator right up in the crack, right on the crack to get the activator to go down in the crack. So when I pour the super glue in, it's going to start to cure from the bottom up rather than now if you were to spray activator on that, all it would do is start activating from the top down and chances are it'll leave you a void down there. This way it'll do its thing on its own. Give it a chance to soak in to the wood more yet. So that's where we're at on that. It doesn't look like there's no more air bubbles showing up. That'll dry crystal clear as well. So that's the name of that tune. I guess we really don't need to see things super up close and personal anymore either. So this one will require a little bit more work. Like I say, we'll have to, once that cures and sets up for a day or two, then I'll go back and I'll just resand just this little small area in here. And this has a 3408 on, which soaks way into the grain. So even though I'm going to go back and sand, I won't sand real coarse sandpaper. Probably start with 320, maybe even 400, because this stuff sands really, really easily. So we'll just hit that and get everything smoothed out and cleaned up. And I most likely will not have to go back over anything again with more super glue because of the fact of how well it soaks into the wood. Because that is what it's designed to do. It's a wicking grade. It's designed to soak in. And the slow setting helps it soak in further yet. Actually, if you do things, some of the things I do are really, I get really creative every once in a while and go real thin down to like 1/8 of an inch or even less in like a bowl or something like that. Then it becomes sort of a problem child, because then I usually will do the inside first, let it set for a whole day, and make sure it's cured, because it comes right straight through to the outside. And then usually I'll have to go back and sand just a little bit on the outside and then finish the outside. But you can't, I've done some stuff that's only 1/8 of an inch thick. You can't do both sides at one time, because it just continues to run straight through the grain to the inside. But it is a one coat finish. That's the beauty of it. One done. The only thing left, I mean, something like this, we'll have to take care of that. We'll have to take the tenon off of it, and then we'll give it a buff. Here's a piece of, you weren't here at the beginning of the night. This is a little piece of Bradford pear. This is actually a log. This would be the bark side of a log, the base of the log. So it was turned and hollowed in that fashion. This thing, I can tell you right now, is really egg-shaped. If I was to put it on the truck and spin it, you would see that it just wobbles like crazy. Once again, there were some places that cracked that I filled in. This has the one coat of the 3408 on. That's the first thing I did this evening. Once again, this will get the tenon removed and finish up this bottom another day, and then figure out what I'm going to do on the inside. Whether I put a coat of, I'll probably try and put a coat of 3408 or something on the inside just to seal it up. That way it doesn't, if I don't seal something like on the inside of these, if I don't seal it, depending on where it goes or whatever, it can still absorb the moisture from the inside and make it move more than what it wants to move, or more than what it should move, and it could possibly crack or something. We sort of have a multitude of projects that we're working on at one time. This is one from the other week. This is a hollow form. Once again, it's hollow. This is a piece of maple. Was disappointed in it. It looked like it had some figure to it that would have made it look much, much better with the coloring on it. It has a black finial. The finial is actually maple. It's just dyed black and lacquered from there. Once again, that needs to be cut off. There, it needs the base cut off. So that, a lot of these projects like this, I'll just take a Sunday evening and we'll just knock a whole bunch of them out at one time. Or that's something I may work on during the week, since we now have a little bit more time. So let's go and see whether there's any good people on this evening. As I find my mouse. I want to go back to that first. And that.